Wrapping up day 3 at SEC Football Media Days in Hoover with Jimmy Hyams. I'm Vince Ferrara. Hey Jimmy, there's 4 teams that win today, but let's not bury the lead. We'll talk about those teams here in a second, but the big story, Houston Chronicle seemingly first reported it, that Oklahoma and Texas have inquired about joining the SEC. What was your initial reaction to that story?
One, I was surprised. I didn't see that one coming. There are people that think there might be another major shift, a major expansion in college football coming soon. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, was asked on one floor level about to comment. He said no comment. Then when he went downstairs, they asked him for another comment. He said no comment. To me, when he says no comment, there's probably something there. Otherwise, he would have refuted it. I don't know that anybody's refuted it at this point. So that's kind of a big deal. Jimbo Fisher was later asked about it, and he basically said, hey, we welcome all rivals. So I don't know, not necessarily confirming it, but just that was one of his comments. So I thought it was very interesting news today.
Yeah, Ross Bjork, AD for Texas A&M, told Paul Feinbaum that, look, we like being the one team in the state of Texas, but there's a reason why other schools may want to be in this conference. So new TV deal coming up, so we'll see what that all means. But there's been a ton of reaction to it. That's why it applies to SEC Football Media Day. So you mentioned Jimbo Fisher. We're talking Texas A&M. Let's start there. Thought he did a nice job in there. He talks fast. But man, he'll still give you some information. What you think, Jimbo?
Well, I think he likes his team. I think he feels like they could be really good. He's got some very good skill position players. I think the key is what he gets out of his quarterback, who I think will be Haynes King. Yeah. So I look forward to that. Defensively, he's got some really nice players. They finally recruited some good defensive players. The line of scrimmage, they brought 2 linemen here, defensive linemen, offensive linemen. I think they're good up front. I think A&M, they were 9-1 a year ago, and they were close to being a college football playoff team. I think they're going to be on the cusp of that again if their quarterback comes through.
And just a connection to the University of Tennessee, I asked Jimbo about Jameer Johnson, offensive lineman who transferred to Texas A&M. He really complimented and said, hey, he played well against us last year, and that he's long, he's athletic, he's big. He loves his work ethic in the offseason, so he said he feels like he'll contribute a lot to him. Didn't guarantee a starting position for him because there's still some competition there, but interesting on that. There were a number of guys that commented on former Tennessee players or Tennessee players coming in to UT, and we'll move to Mississippi State also in that same session. Austin Williams saying about Javonte Payton, man, he's really explosive. He spent a lot of time together. He said, man, he's going to be a great addition to Tennessee. What do you think of Mississippi State today?
Well, Javonte Payton started the year at Mississippi State putting up some big numbers. Of course, everybody did when they played LSU, right? And then he started to slide a little bit. His production wasn't there. I don't know the reasons for that. And so Mike Leach didn't want to talk about it. He only want to talk about the players on his roster, not those from Tennessee. But I think Payton could be a really nice addition to Tennessee. I thought Leach handled things well. He typically does. And then when he was asked about, hey, was there a time when you almost became a Tennessee coach? And then he talked about a coup, and he said, I wasn't part of that coup. So I thought that was kind of interesting from Mike Leach.
Yeah, and he was funny. I mean, it's just his one-liner is like, I'm not really big into opening statements, so you guys will ask me what you want to anyway, so just go. Right, and by the way, Eric Kane and I both struck out with Leach in trying to ask him and get some comments on Payton. He wouldn't go there for either one of us, but long diatribe on the transfer portal. He had this crazy idea where, hey, if you graduate, you should get paid $150,000. It doesn't have to be that amount, but to give you incentive to graduate and stay at your school. And he said if you transfer, then you lose out on that money. What do you think of that proposal?
Well, ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Shouldn't happen. No, I'm not a fan of that one at all.
All right, morning session. We'll start with Vandy and then close it out with Bama. Just think of Clark to leave Vandy.
He's got a big challenge today with Vanderbilt, and obviously he knows he's got to build from the ground up. He's got a deal where the players have to earn their jerseys, and that's saying if you want to play Vanderbilt, you have to meet a certain standard. But gosh, he's not really inheriting much on offense, much on defense. Now, he's got a pretty good quarterback, I think, but my goodness, I think Vanderbilt's talent level has dropped precipitously over the last couple of years. It's going to take a long time before Vanderbilt can even be, in my opinion, a bowl-eligible team.
Yeah, he said he's not worried about wins and losses in terms of defining success. Well, everybody else is going to count that, whether he likes it or not. Maybe not the first year, but it's important.
The only coaches that say that are the coaches that know they got a bad team. So we're not worried about wins and losses.
Right.
Yeah, of course you're not. You're going to go 2-10.
That's a good point. All right, Alabama's not going 2-10. Breaking news here at SEC Football Media Days. Nick Saban, as always, gives you answers, gives you quotes, talks about things that everyone else runs back and asks everybody else about. Saban was outstanding.
I thought he was. Whether he was talking about his quarterback maybe getting a $900,000 deal, how would that impact the locker room? Whether it was talking about how when players play against maybe inferior teams that have a big lead, that when he was in the NFL, he used to look at the cut-ups of the players and determine. He didn't know what the score of the game was. He didn't know if it was a bad opponent. He just looked at how you play. I thought that was interesting insight. He talked about the hiring of Lane Kiffin, what Kiffin did, and bringing a wide-open offense to Alabama. And he said Kiffin was a pro-style I-formation guy, and he had to learn it as well. But I thought he touched on a lot of things that were really interesting, and also the vaccination. He said, look, the players, it's their choice. But you also have to understand the implication on your team. He touched on NC State in the College World Series not being able to play. They had some unvaccinated players. And so he said, we encourage our players to get vaccinated. You're darn right they do.
Right.
Because if you don't, you run the risk of infecting players or maybe not having enough players to play a game. And I think that's really important. But I thought Saban, he pointed that out. It's an individual decision to think what you're doing to the team if you don't get a vaccination.
Yeah, and a funny moment from Saban, too. Somebody asked him about now a coach saying that 12 personnel is starting to come back on the offense side of the ball. And Saban, just deadpan, he's like, what's 12 personnel? I don't know.
And then the guy started trying to explain it.
Right.
Oh, well, I'll try to tell you, Coach.
Big smile on his face saying, just kidding. So well done. But Nick Saban, I was also impressed by John Mitchum III. He had some cool sneaks on, but I thought he was very impressive. He's another one that said, I'm not really worried about too much the name, image, and likeness right now, focus on his team. And, you blogged about that because we're starting to hear more and more players say, hey, we're worried about our team, not necessarily the NFL.
And Mitchum's the next in those line of great receivers at Alabama, right? He's got a chance to be that guy. Of course, they lost Devontae Smith. They lost Jalen Waddle in the Tennessee game a year ago, so he didn't play half the season for Alabama. But this is another one in the long line of these Alabama receivers that you expect to be outstanding. And he needs to be really good, I think, to help Bryce Young. Young's going to need a player of that caliber to throw to, and I think Mitchum can be that guy.
All right, final three teams tomorrow. What are you looking for in the final day of SEC football?
Well, you got Arkansas on board. You got Sam Pittman, who used to coach in Tennessee. They're trying to make that move from a 3-win season where they impressed a lot of people with 3 wins because they were so bad when they took over. Now can they elevate to that bowl eligible status? We'll see if they're able to do that. And, I don't know. Auburn, I think it's going to be interesting. Brian Harrison, he's got Bo Nix here, a quarterback that needs to become more consistent. He's a guy that's good enough to beat Alabama, right, a couple of years ago, but he's been up and down, and it'll be interesting to see if Auburn can get that consistency out of the quarterback position.
I think Missouri is going to.
Missouri with Eli Drinkwitz, I like him. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's got a good young quarterback. Missouri's a team that's going to be interesting to me. I think they have a chance to upset some people, but I also think they're a team that is vulnerable because I don't think they're overloaded with talent. They lost some pretty good players from this last year's team, but I think Drinkwitz is a really good coach. And Missouri, to me, is one of those teams that will be on the cusp of being bowl eligible.
All right, 99.1, thesportsanimal.com. We're probably above the 100 podcast point at this point, and we're not done. Bunch of videos on there as well. Follow us on all our social media accounts. Go to the central page, and you can go through and learn about each and every team in the Southeastern Conference. Tremendous amount of content. Nobody covers it like we do here. Great staff here, great staff back in our studios, all helping out. We will be back with a wrap-up tomorrow, and then, of course, all-day coverage here on 99.1, The Sports Animal. That'll end things here for our wrap-up. I'm Vince Ferrara for Jimmy Hyams and Aaron Kane. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.